Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me one more time for another Dominions 5 Basic Nation analysis. I didn't mean to say one more time. Obviously, there will be more of these, but in any case, I'm churning this one out pretty quickly after the last one. I do mean to get back into the rhythm of making them, and this one is going to be directly relevant for an ongoing series, which is, of course, Middle Age Marignon. So, let's dive right into it, shall we? I've got a year's worth of expansion done here. Middle Age Marignon is basically the Spanish Inquisition as a nation. We talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the Accidental Ascension 2 series, but basically as Middle Age Marignon, you've got fire magic, you've got astral magic, and you've got some really, really tough knights. Some of the toughest knights in the game. Not quite, but in terms of overall balance, very, very powerful. You've also got these flagellants, which are a little bit weird. If you look at my expansion, you can see that my expansion was actually pretty decent. It's turned 13 instead of 12 because I took a dormant god, which is Big McLargehead, the Baphomet over here. And despite that, I still ended up with 15 provinces, which is pretty nice, despite bumping over here and losing a couple of sketchy happenings. I had to pause an expansion party down here for a little while because I took a couple of excess casualties. I did have to hire a group of mercenaries to get it done. The Elephant Corps, led by Hannibal, and they took, I think, one province and then bounced off a barbarian province. No, they took two provinces, I believe. But overall, this was done with national troops, and the secret to it is these knights that I'm talking about. The Knights of the Chalice of Marignon are probably Marignon's single strongest point troop-wise. They have very good stats, they have higher protection than most knights, they have high defense skill, and of course they have the three attacks. They have the lance charge, the broadsword, and the hoof, which is standard of heavy cavalry. So they're upgraded knights, but they're also sacred. This combines with another fact about Marignon, which is that Marignon gets extra bless points. This is not common. There's only a few nations that get extra bless points. Marignon is one of them. Marignon gets 2 extra fire and 2 extra astral bless points. What that means is that if you take on your god 4 points of fire, you get 6 fire bless points. If you take 5 points of astral, you get 7 astral bless points. And the Baphomet starts with 2 fire, 1 astral, and 1 blood, which means you can also take blood very, very cheaply. So with this Baphomet, Big McLargehead, I have taken 4 fire, 5 astral, 6 blood, a total of 6, 7, and 6 bless points. And the blessing I've taken is attack skill plus 4, strength plus 4, and Fate Weaving. 16 versus magic resistance. So anyone attacking a unit with Fate Weaving has to make a magic resistance check to not suck for several rounds. And if they fail that magic resistance check, they get the Fate Woven effect. I forget what exactly it's called. But in any case, it makes their prot rolls lower. It makes them more likely to suffer critical hits. And it, what else was it? There was another effect. It just makes them terrible. Like, it makes them legitimately bad units for several rounds, as long as it lasts. And, of course, the rest of my bless is, like I said, attack skill plus 4 and strength plus 4. Well, when you apply that bless to Knights of the Chalice, they become absurd. Attack skill 18 with 1 experience star. Strength 16, so their weapons, like their broadsword, hitting for 22 damage. It doesn't affect the hoof attack, but it does affect the broadsword, which means they cut right through armor really, really quickly. Like, you have to be Ulm in order to resist those hits. And it also applies to the lances on the charge, of course, but they only get used once. So, with those bonuses, the Knights of the Chalice become incredibly potent. During my expansion, I routinely had groups of 4 or 5 Knights of the Chalice with maybe a couple of other units taking provinces like this. This is an extremely viable expansion party. This expansion party can carry on for a while. I could send this guy into this province, Longbowmen, Knights, and Militia. They'll probably win. I mean, they might not. They might lose, but they'll probably win. Alternatively, I've got these 7. I'm actually not sure if this is going to work. I'm going to send both of these expansion parties into this throne. So we've got a grand total of 12 knights. We've got 2 crossbowmen as, like, distractions. We've got 1 swordsman and 1 flagellant. Flagellants are another special thing about Marignon that I'll talk about in a second. And I just want to see if this works. So I'm just gonna run the turn real quick. Also, before I do that, to note my general position, I've got 15 provinces. I've got a lot of money in the bank because I have not been spending my gold efficiently. I haven't really been paying it close attention because I've been more interested in working with the units. But despite that, I've got 1 palisade built, and that can upgrade to a fortress. I've got 1 palisade 1 month away, 2 palisades each 1 month away. So I'm a little bit slow, but I'm still going to have 4 forts long before the end of year 1 here. Probably 5, because I'm going to start another one. Probably like down here. Or maybe over here to grab those provinces. And I could certainly start another one right here as well. Not great recruitment points, but good resources. I could start one here. Or, of course, I could start one here if I manage to take this place over. This has 100 units. Let's see if we win. I won't be surprised if we bounce, but let's find out. So my point being with all of that is just that I have a lot of money. I have not been spending it fantastically. And even so, I have a significant number of forts and I'm doing pretty well. So I would anticipate this place has sorcerers, and it does. It has blood mages. So they've got a circle master, 2 circle masters, and 2 conjurers, it looks like. Okay, and one of them has astral. That's fine. So we're going to bless up. And the knights go in. And look at the knights carve through that infantry. They are hacking through it with no problem because, look, they've got the Fate Weaving. And they're doing 22 damage on their attacks. Plus, with their attack skill being so high, they can actually repel attacks from swords. So these heavy infantry, since they're only length 1 and the enemy and the knight swords are also length 1, they're actually getting repelled, I believe. This guy has cursed luck, so increased chances of getting hit, increased chance of those hits dealing high damage, and I believe it also lowers his chance to hit. But in general, it just means these knights mow through whatever they fight. These skeletons are going to go down very, very quickly as well. And while they're taking a little bit of damage, it is not much because of that high protection, decent defense skill, plus the high attack skill, giving them an excellent repel ability. Alright, sorry about the brief interruption there, but as you can see, yeah, these knights are just mowing through this throne with no problem. I think I've taken a couple of casualties, but not many. Was that a rout? Did that guy run? Okay, so that guy just routed, so I think his unit just failed their morale check, but the other unit is still going strong. And, yep, they cleaned the place up. So what casualties did we take? So we lost 2 Knights of the Chalice with 128 kills. That's the power of this bless. And this is not a huge bless. My scales are still good. My scales, you can see here, Order 1, Productivity 3. This is necessary because your Knights are very expensive in resources. Heat 3, Growth 3, Misfortune 3, and Magic 3. Magic 3 is also important because your mages are pretty garbage. The Initiate, with 45 gold, in Magic 3, they make fantastic researchers. 10 research points for 45 gold. But they're only Fire 1, which is pretty bad. Like, the best they can do is summon lesser fire elementals if absolutely necessary. Witch Hunters are slightly better mages. Only 11 research points for 185, but they're Holy 1, Fire 2, Astral 1, and they have leadership, so they can lead expansion parties. You can expand in the early game without recruiting commanders by recruiting Witch Hunters and expanding with Sacreds. High Inquisitors, recruitable Holy 3s, who can cast Divine Blessing, that's very useful. And Grandmasters, Fire 3, Astral 2, Holy 2, and they're random. We talked about these earlier, so I'm not going to go into detail, but just leave it at this. Marignon's mages are not powerful, and they're very limited in what they can do. Fire and Astral, you have a few randoms on your Grandmasters, but not much. You really need to try and expand out into indie mages as quickly as you can. Your mages are not your strong suit in any way, shape, or form. They're just not very good. However, your troops, for one thing, you have recruitable cheap crossbows. That's very good, especially because you can cast flaming arrows very easily. So masses of crossbows under flaming arrows, fantastic. Infantry, these 2 are mediocre. This one's garbage. This one's a pretty solid heavy infantry unit, but expensive in resources. So once again, you need high productivity. Notice I'm out of resources here. These 3 are your interesting units. Royal Guard, Protection 21, the highest protection of any unit outside of Ulm, as far as I can recall. Also high defense skill, so Royal Guard don't die. They just last and last and last. They also have the Bodyguard ability, so you can assign them to defend against assassins. They're very solid that way. Knights of the Chalice, we've been talking about. Excellent stats overall. Sacred Knights, very, very good. And Flagellants. And Flagellants are interesting. Flagellants are garbage, and they start with afflictions, but they hit really hard and they get 2 attacks. So, with this bless that I've taken, which is, recall, Strength +4, Attack +4, these Flagellants, they have an attack penalty on the flail, but once again, they get 2 attacks. So they're swinging at 13 for well over 20 damage. Let's actually demonstrate that. The other thing about them, we're going to build a temple. The other thing about them is that both Knights of the Chalice and Flagellants can be recruited anywhere. In any place you have a temple and a fort, you can recruit them, which of course makes them very, very massable. You can have those guys all over the place. You can mass up Knights of the Chalice very, very easily. See, Flagellants. All you need is a temple to recruit Flagellants. You can just plop a temple down somewhere, and like, look, I'm just going to build a temple, and once you've done that, you can recruit Flagellants there. It doesn't... You don't even need a fort. And we can build a palisade there. See, I have tons of money because I haven't been spending it. So this is very inefficient Marignon expansion, because as you see, I have tons of money and resources left over that I haven't been using. I haven't been paying attention to my research once I got enchantment level 4, which I hit pretty early. My research is pretty solid. It's okay. In general, Marignon can do better than this with this Dormant Bless, and it's interesting that Marignon can expand this well without an Awake Expander. Marignon does have the option of taking an Awake Expander. Their Pretender God chassis include a lot of options, which we'll talk about later, but in general, I would say the Baphomet is probably the best option, because the Baphomet allows you to get a very good Bless very cheaply and still have good scales. So over here, I have Dom 7, so I can now pump out 7 Flagellants, well, only 6 because I'm locked on resources. But let's pump out a couple sets of Flagellants and I'll show you how hard they hit when blessed. Actually, we'll just do one, because I want to jump into the battle real quick. Okay, there was an arena deathmatch, which is fine. We're going to ignore that. So, all these guys, we're going to bless them. We're going to send them in. Ruggiero, just go over there, do your thing. What this means is that troop-wise, Marignon is very dangerous. Mage-wise, they're not. Magic-wise, they're fairly predictable. As Marignon, independent mages are your lifeline. You're going to have to grab them as quickly as possible, and it's worth fighting wars about them. It's legitimately worth just straight up going to war over decent independent mages, because having that magic variability, having that magic path access that you don't natively have is very bad. So these guys is very good, rather. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it was bad to have magic access. Not having it is very bad. So these are knights. These are, they have prot 18, defense skill 16. They're what the Knights of the Chalice are based off of. And they're close in terms of stats. Not quite there, but close. They have lower attack skill. That's the main difference. But now watch what happens when I bless. So we cast the bless. So the knights obviously are up to ridiculous levels. The flagellants are also pretty dangerous. Like, this guy happened to be weakened, so he's still only damage 16 because they spawn with afflictions because they're terrible. This guy's doing 21 damage a swing, and he gets 2 swings at attack 13, plus anyone who attacks him is fate woven. And so, yeah. So basically, flagellants turn into really, really effective chaff when they're blessed. Look at that. The knights vaporized. They took a number of flagellants with them, but they vaporized on contact. They're both fate woven. They accomplished nothing except killing a couple of very, very replaceable flagellants. And the Knights of the Chalice are now going to charge back here and murder the longbowmen with no trouble whatsoever. So that's what flagellants do. These flagellants got mostly sucked up the charge, but I can afford to throw flagellants away to suck up the charge because I can recruit them anywhere for 10 gold. They cost more than militia, and actually their stats are worse than militia, but especially once they're blessed, they do more work than militia does, because, once again, they get 2 attacks and they do a ton of damage. It's perfectly viable to mass tons of flagellants and use them as your chaff. I don't like to do it. I prefer to rely on the knights, because I think the knights are more powerful, they suffer less attrition, and they can press on through more kinds of opposition. The flagellants are just very chaffy, but since as Marignon with good scales you tend to have a lot of money, you can afford to build up tons and tons of chaffy flagellants. The other thing about Marignon is that they have some very powerful national summons, which are very interesting. So, the Harbinger. Astral 4, 25 Astral Pearls. It summons a flying angel who has Air 3, so this breaks you into air in a reasonably decent way. Going up to Conjuration for Harbingers is worth doing. Harbingers as support mages are very valuable, because with Air 3 they can cast... We're going to back out real quick. With Air 3, they can't cast Fog Warriors until they storm, but they can storm and get around that to cast Fog Warriors, especially if you have 2 of them. If you have 2 Harbingers, you can ramp up to cast Fog Warriors in, if I recall correctly, round 3. And dropping Fog Warriors on your knights, who are already super powerful, is a very potent combination. Or for that matter, dropping Fog Warriors on your flagellants. Fog Warrior flagellants are much scarier than they look. At level 7, you get Angelic Host, which summons an Archangel, which has Fire Magic and Holy, and a host of 6 Angels of the Host, which are fairly unimpressive. And Heavenly Wrath, which summons an Angel of Fury. Angel of Fury also has Fire Magic. Overall, I would say he's not worth it compared to the Harbinger and the Archangel. They're a little bit better thugs, I guess, but, well, to be honest, I would rather use Harbingers for that because of the air magic. And then at the very high level, you have Heavenly Choir. This spell costs 144 Astral Pearls. It summons a Seraph, 9 Angels of the Choir, and 3 Harbingers. Now, this spell is actually so expensive that there is a cheaper way to get Seraphs. It's actually cheaper to cast Wish for 100 Pearls, Wish for a Seraph, and then use Gift of Reason on that Seraph. That will get you a Seraph more cheaply, and at the point when you're casting this spell, the Angels of the Heavenly Choir and the Harbingers are not super useful, because this is endgame research. This is level 9 Conjuration. The game is rocketing toward its close. This spell you'll very rarely use, in my experience. Most games don't go that long, and the ones that do, even then, Now, Seraphs are enormously powerful. They're one of the most powerful super combatants in the game. They're also incredibly powerful casters. They have Astral Magic, Fire Magic, and I forget what the other one is. They have a third type of magic that I don't recall right at the moment. They're extremely potent, but they're extremely expensive. In most games, you're never going to get one, which is why, once again, I'm not actually certain about what else magic it has. I know it has 3. I think it's Fire, Air, and Astral. So it's very powerful. It has Invulnerability 35. It starts with a magic weapon. It's got all kinds of, it can fly, obviously. And yet it's not hardly worth it. Like, even I, as focused on super combatants as I am, I would not make a point of summoning Seraphs all that much, because once you get up to this, if you get to this level of research and the game is still very much in doubt, yeah, by all means, summon Seraphs. And thug them out and use them as army support casters to cast big buff spells, and etc, and etc. They're really good. They're just really expensive and really late in the game. This is the big one for me. The Harbingers, Air 3 on a flying chassis is huge for Marignon because it lets you bring that air magic in situations when you normally wouldn't have it. The only other way you get air nationally is a random on your Grandmasters. And so breaking yourself out of that fire and astral ghetto that you're in is very valuable. Knowing that you have mainly fire magic, your first priorities, in my opinion, are Enchantment 4 for Flaming Arrows for your crossbows, and then Conjuration 5 for Fire Elementals. Once you're there, you might as well go Conjuration 6 for Harbingers. You also want Construction 6 pretty early, because at Construction 6 you can start to use your crazy numbers of Fire Gems. You get 4 Fire Gems per turn from the start, to churn out Lightless Lanterns, and that kicks your research through the roof. And once your research is through the roof, you can continue going down Conjuration, you can get into some of the other paths. You can run down Alteration for Phoenix Pyre for your Fire Magic Angels. You can do all kinds of cool stuff. You can even research Blood, since if you take this Bless, you have Blood on your Baphomet. The Baphomet is unimmobile, but he can, if you really want to, he can Blood Hunt your capital, build up some slaves, empower somebody else, and break you into Blood forcibly. You can do that faster than people who didn't take Blood on their Pretender God, so that's something that you could potentially do. That's Shibalba. Oh, hello, Shibalba. So that's a possibility for a late game. Other than that, your late game is Astral Magic, which is, in my opinion, the weakest of the sorcery late games. Astral Magic doesn't have a summonable immortal. Astral Magic is only really super useful on the battlefield. It does have some very cool rituals, but a lot of those rituals you can't really cast very easily. You do get up to Astral 3 on your Grandmasters. Where'd my Grandmaster go? There he is. You can random Astral 3 on Grandmasters, which is very useful. But yeah, mostly you've got fire. And with that fire, you can very easily cast Eternal Pyre in the late game. Like with a guy like this, Arnaud, he's got 4 fire already. You forge the hat, now he has 5 fire, and then you either empower once, or you get a hold of a Death Mage and forge the Skull of Fire in order to push him up to 6. So at that point, you can, just go ahead and spit out the Eternal Pyre, and now you can just cast 1,000,000 fire elementals in every battle. Casting 1,000,000 fire elementals is Marignon's staple strategy. It's that and spamming crossbows. Those are the two things that they do really, really well. And those tactics will take you quite a ways. They just don't work against everything and in all circumstances. So I think that's enough of looking at this screen. Let's talk about Pretender Gods real quick, because while the Baphomet is a good option, you do have a lot of other good options. So I'll be back with you in just a moment. Alright, so here we are, and now you can see why I say that Marignon has a lot of good options. You've got the Baphomet, and the Baphomet is cheap. Like, this is the reason why you can take this Bless. The Baphomet is cheap. Cheap as hell. You do have to take Misfortune in order to get Fate Weaving, but to my mind, it's worth it. So, you can take this here, and you can go Attack Skill. This is what I did, not Major Fire Resistance. Major Fire Resistance wouldn't be bad, since you are, of course, spamming a lot of fire magic in most battles. So having some major, you could absolutely justify going Major Fire Resistance here. Myself, I like the double attack skill, but this is also perfectly valuable. It makes you a little bit less killy early on. I would go Dormant because you need the points. You need Productivity 3. You really want Magic 3. It's not vital, but turning those cheap little initiates you get into really efficient researchers is, to my mind, worth it. You could go 0 if you don't need the extra points. And then, yeah, you could even go Awake with this Bless if you wanted to. And then you'd have the Fate Weaving right from the start, which would be sort of hilarious. You have the points here to do nothing, really. You're just 19 design points over. If you went Dormant, you could even kick yourself up to Order 3. Or, of course, you could take Magic 3 Order 1, which is what I did because I wanted the research. Other alternatives, you could kick your paths up higher. You could go Fire 7, and then with Fire 7, you actually have 9 points. You don't even need to go that high. You can actually just go Fire 5 and take Awe, which is sort of a hilarious Bless. You could take Heat Aura. Heat Aura is also a pretty good Bless. 5 Fire Bless points for that, and then you could still take the attack skill. That gives you, not Fire Shield, Heat Aura. That gives you fire resistance. And it also gives you the heat aura that fatigues people out around you. We can actually drop a point from there. That's a viable strategy. Or you can, if you wanted to, you could also throw in some earth. You could throw in 5 points of earth there. With 5 points of earth, you could take fire and shock resist, or you could take unbreakable, or you could take a couple points of reinvigoration, whatever you really thought was valuable. Other strategies for blessing. You can take a Mage Bless, because all of your mages are sacred. So if you take Astral, you can easily take some Arcane Command, Major Magic Resistance, Farcaster, Arcane Finesse, any of that stuff. Some of this is also good for your troops. Major Magic Resistance is good for your knights. Magic Weapons is really good for your knights. You can certainly justify taking Magic Weapons as well as the Twist Fate. Like, you could just go up to 6 here, take the Twist Fate, cut that out. You still have 129 points if you're Dormant. Or you could go Awake here, and you just have to lose 1 point of Dominion, which hurts you a little bit since you are relying on massing Sacreds, but this is also super useful. And then you just put on the attack skill, put on the Strength of the Flesh. I wouldn't go Blood Surge here, and I wouldn't go Blood Surge mainly because, I mean, it's valuable, but it's an awkward amount. It's 4 points. It doesn't let you divide really evenly like this, and the +2 strength is always active, whereas the Blood Surge only activates when you kill somebody. So the Blood Surge is really useful on your knights, but the Strength of the Flesh is useful for your knights, and it makes your flagellants capable of killing effectively. So I would take the Strength just so that when you mass up 150 or 200 or 300 flagellants, they'll all be hitting at 21 damage, except for the ones who are weakened. So you could do this. There's many small variations of this Bless. However, you also have a ton of other options. You could take a Thrice-Horned Boar, which is arguably the most underpriced and efficient expanding chassis in the game, and just give him a real cheap, hard skin Bless, or bark skin. Personally, I think it's really useful to go bark skin and then either fire shock resist or double strength of the earth. that gives you the hard-hitting part of the bless. It also means that your knights are protection 24, which is really, really strong. Downside of this, you have to lose a couple of scales. Probably have to go Turmoil in order to get Dominion 6, and you don't get any magic. But this guy is a very viable expander. He will kickstart your expansion, and you'll end up bigger than the guy who took the Baphomet, probably. And like I said, this bless is still perfectly functional on both your knights and your flagellants. In fact, the bark skin makes your flagellants quite a bit better, because it means they have 10 protection, which they didn't have before. You can take the Drakon. The Drakon can be made an expander with literally no paths. So you could take the Drakon here and go like that, and give him like Earth 4 or something for a couple points of reinvigoration or whatever, and then just scale it up a little bit. Have a few more scales. I probably wouldn't. If I was going to pick an expander, I would probably take the Thrice Horned Boar, but you've just got all of these options. You have the Great White Bull, you have the Hound of Hades, who is also a very good expander if you want death for whatever reason. Having death is a good idea, so maybe you take him and the Deathfire crosspath so that you can forge skulls and automatically ramp up into Eternal Pyre. My choices would probably be either the Baphomet for the Big Bless or the Thrice Horned Boar for the easy expansion. Because the Thrice Horned Boar will expand, like I said, very, 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 very easily. And with this bless, this is still pretty solid. It'll still help your units. It's not as tailored towards what you like as the Baphomet, but it will work. And, of course, it will give you this guy who can run around trampling independence very, very easily as long as he's in your Dominion. With the Berserker +5, his protection goes up to 21. He doesn't even need a protection buff. He's got recuperation, so afflictions can't keep him down for long. He's got just a huge pig wang, in case you'd never noticed that. And Elwinter does not shy away from that stuff, man. And, of course, he can cast high-level earth and or nature spells in the late game if and when you accumulate the gem income to do that, which is valuable in and of itself. Last part of the nation that's worth noting. You have the recruitable Paladin. The Paladin can bless himself, and he has all the good points of the Knights. So Paladins can thug. Especially if you have a powerful Incarnate Bless, Paladins can actually sometimes solo provinces, and once you start slapping gear on them, Paladins get very, very tough. For example, you put a Shield of Gleaming Gold on this guy to give him awe. You give him a longer weapon, a magical weapon, so that he can repel much more easily, and with that attack ×2 bless, he will repel attacks all day, every day. An enchanted pike is a classic, but cavalry can't use that, so try to find like a length 2 or length 3 weapon that he can use on horseback. I don't think enchanted pikes can be used by cavalry. And that he can just repel attacks constantly. He's very tough, especially when blessed, and if you give him the Baphomet bless, he hits like a truck. If you give him the pig bless like this, he's even tougher because he's 24 protection and he still hits like a truck. So thugging with Marignon is very, very viable, and in fact it's something I would recommend. I would recommend using paladins as thugs now and then when you have the excess resources. It's not a big thing. It's not something you should go whole hog into because they are still only 15 hit points, but Marignon is one of the nations that can do it. Most nations just can't, straight up can't thug any of their national commanders effectively. Mari can, and thugged paladins can be quite powerful with the right bless on them. The last thing about Marignon, of course, is they have the architects. Where'd the architect go? Where'd the architect go? There he is, architect. So they can build citadels. They start with a citadel in their capital, and so they get 3 command points, which means they can pump out a mage and a half per turn. And with the architects, they can build citadels in other places, which means they can upgrade citadels on important independent mages to pump out 1.5 of them per turn. I would recommend doing this, especially on Amazons or on Bone Tribe. Either of those are really, really valuable to you, and so build citadels on them, churn out 1.5 per turn, you won't regret it. And of course, you can also use those citadels and their greater resource gathering capability to churn out Knights of the Chalice. And anytime you can't afford Knights of the Chalice, you just mix in flagellants, and you have an excellent hard-hitting Sacred Core to stand in front of your huge masses of crossbows. So, thanks for watching. I hope that was a little bit helpful. If you have any more questions, comments, concerns, contradictions, etc., put them down in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like, let YouTube know so they know what to recommend to people, and I will see you all in the next one. And here's hoping that Accidental Ascension 2 goes well. Take care.